video, I'm going to be showing you a cute little design that I just call Game Night. So it's got a deck of cards, or I guess a hand of cards. It has a royal flush on it. It's got some dice and then some poker chips. And it's just really cute. We personally are definitely game people. We play games all the time. Melody gets to play a game before bed every single night. And so board games and card games and all of this stuff are things that are very near and dear to our hearts. I hope you guys like this design as much as we do, and don't forget to click subscribe to see all my future videos as well. Bye! So we're going to start out with a dark green background, thinking of it as if like it's got a felt mat on the table. So we're going to just start out with that dark green color. Such a beautiful dark green. It is one from Double Dip, and it's one that I use all the time because it applies and it sculpts so beautifully. Then I'm going to encapsulate it with a layer of clear acrylic to make sure it stays nice and strong, and just to protect the color. Something I do regardless of brand. It's just my personal preference and kind of my ritual. Then I'm going to file the nail into shape with my e-file, getting it all cleaned up and nice and perfect for our next step. So now on a little piece of scrap paper, we're going to just draw out a rectangle. After you have your rectangle drawn out, you're going to take some white acrylic and we're going to be sculpting our deck of cards. I always say deck of cards, and I mean hand of cards. So sculpt out 5 rectangles, and obviously depending on the game, there's more or less cards in your hand, but we're just going to start out with those 5. And then I'm going to cut away the sides to get really crisp, clean edges. Think of this as just cutting it out almost like with paper. I am using a craft knife dipped into some clear acrylic powder. If you do not dip your craft knife into powder, whether it be clear or white, it is going to stick to the acrylic and it's going to make a huge mess when you go to cut it away. It's going to stretch on the acrylic and it's going to pull it out, and those nice sharp lines are not going to happen. So we're going to repeat this process, like I said, to cut out 5 cards. Oh, yeah, words, numbers, all gets jumbled up in my brain. It's amazing that I can even play cards. Anyways, we're going to keep cutting those out. Once you have all of them cut, you can just set those to the side for a moment to cure. Before you assemble them, because they are so thin, you want to make sure that they really are 100% cured so that they do not bend or have it almost looks like they're wilting, like a flower that's wilting, and they'll just sort of droop to a side. So leave those so that you don't have any issue with that. And then we're going to take more white acrylic and we're going to press them from side to side until we can get them into a nice cube shape, obviously the best that we can. It does help to file them later, but if you just keep pressing in from the sides, you should be able to get some pretty decent height on your little set of dice so that they do actually get a cube shape. And then once you're done and you've patted those to the point where they no longer move, hold them with a little tweezers and take your e-file and file the edges to try to straighten them and get them as cube-like as possible. And now with red and blue acrylic, sculpt multiple circles on your nail form backing, trying to get them to be as similar in size as possible. Obviously, they might not be identical. That's okay. They just have to be close to the same size. And the best way to make sure that they're close to the same size is to monitor how you are picking up your beads of acrylic. What I mean by this is when you have your little jar of monomer next to you and you have your acrylic color. When you dip your brush into the monomer, pay attention to how far are you dipping your brush in. Is it halfway up the hair? Is it all the way in? Are you dipping it to the bottom of your jar? Are you just dipping the very tip of the hair? How are you dipping it? And then when you tap it off on the side of your jar, do you just tap it like at the base of the brush? Do you tap the whole side of the brush? Do you press on the brush? How long do you press on the brush? All of those questions are going to make a huge difference. Once you have a rhythm set up and you're doing it exactly the same way each time, and then that part of the process is the same and you're replicating it. Then when you go to do and you dip your brush into your powder, how far are you dipping your bristles into the powder? How long are you holding it there? Are you tapping it or are you dragging it? Make sure that you're remembering and replicating those details as well. If you're doing the same thing both with your monomer and your polymer, each time you're going to end up with the same size beads or close. Obviously, there are minute differences no matter what you do, but the more you pay attention to those things, the better off you're going to be. So now that we have all of our little game pieces made, we're going to start attaching them to the nail. I began attaching the cards at the tip of the nail with nail glue, but once I got a little bit towards where the nail started curving down, I couldn't glue them in place and keep the hand in the right sort of position. So then I ended up attaching them with clear acrylic from card to card. Once they're all attached, then I'm going to go through and flip this over because it's really delicate at this point. Those cards are so thin that we really need to secure them in the back with some more of that clear acrylic. So just add a little stripe of clear acrylic going across the backs of all the cards, and then you can move on to the next step, which is going to be either attaching your dice or your chips. So we're going to do the dice first, just in one corner. That way when we go through and we attach the chips, they can be spilling across our game table without having to worry about leaving space for the dice. I'm going to start out with one red chip, and then I'm going to be adding a little stack. Like I said, I want them to be somewhat spilled. So after I have a nice little stack built up, I'm going to switch over and have them not be quite as, perfectly aligned. And you can stack them up so that they're one right on top of each other, or like me, I stacked them so that they were a little bit topsy-turvy. I personally, whenever I play games with chips, which isn't often because we aren't necessarily poker players in my family, in my household, but occasionally we do have a game that requires chips, I make sure that mine are stacked perfectly, like they're completely lined up, and I usually have them stacked in numbers of, say, 10, because I'm a little bit OCD that way. So stacking them a little haphazardly for this nail design was almost something I couldn't do, even though I knew aesthetically it would be the most pleasing. So if you can't do it either, I understand. It's just one of those things where, like I said, it's more aesthetically pleasing to not have them be perfect. It gives the nail a little bit more movement, it's a little more interesting to look at, and so for that purpose, it is possibly better to have them that way. Depending on how extreme and over the top you want this nail to be, you can move it to the side so that it's, they stick off the edges a little bit. And then once we have that done, we're going to go through and we're going to be painting the details on all of our little cards and dice and chips. So you can pick whatever kind of cards you want for your hand. They can be, a royal flush like I did. If you want it to be easier, don't paint face cards. Do something like, ones and threes, or aces and twos and threes and fours. The fewer little things you have to paint, the easier it's going to be. So a higher number card like a 10 is going to have a lot more hearts or diamonds or spades or clubs to paint than a 3 would. And same thing, a king has a lot of detail compared to a 3. So depending on the level of dedication you want to give this design, you may choose to do a different particular hand. And depending on the game you're trying to replicate, different hands are better. Like for instance, if you're playing cribbage, a double run that is a 3-4-5 is, or a 3-4-4-5 is about the best thing you can get. Or 3-4-4-5-6. That's the hand that you want to get. And so you can do something like that instead of, a royal flush, because I'm going to just go back to cribbage. In cribbage, a royal flush is okay, but it's not worth nearly as much as some of those double runs with a lot of 15s. And anybody that doesn't play cribbage is going to think I'm just babbling on about nothing. Hopefully somebody out there gets it. Anywho, we're just going to go through. I did just do a royal flush, and my whole game table is a little bit more poker centric, just because a lot of people play poker and it's something that's very recognizable. And so a little cribbage pegboard would mean nothing to a lot of people. And so we're going to go through and just do the jack then. It's very repetitious to be painting the jack, the queen, the king, because even though they are different and the different face cards have different facial features, different positioning, just because of how they're overlapped, you don't paint really all of that much. And different brands of cards have a different style on them, so there's some that are really fun. I know we had a set of cat cards. It was the whole deck. All of the cards had cats on them instead of, your regular king, queen, jack. And so the jack was a cat that had a little crown on it. The queen was a cat that she was wearing like a big wig and a crown and different things. If you wanted to be crazy with it, you could do something totally off the wall like that too, depending on, how serious you want this to look. If you want to look kind of Vegas-y and really official, you might not want to do that. After you have all your cards detailed as such, you're going to want to go through and do the very tiniest little black outline around the perimeter of them. It really helps separate them out just because they're the same colors over and over again, red, blue, black, or red, blue, yellow, and then this black line really makes it so that they stand out from each other. Once you have all of your cards detailed, then you can move on and do things with your dice and your poker chips. With your dice, just make sure you don't do any number on a side twice. If you accidentally do it twice, it's, a trick dice and you don't necessarily want to purposefully do that. Maybe you do. Like I said, you can do whatever you want with this. It's your nail design. We're going to just do, I kind of did mine at random, depending on the game you're playing. Like I said with, the cribbage cards, if you want to replicate or represent a specific game, maybe you'd want to do, 2 5s or snake eyes or something with your dice instead of a 5 and a 3. So just add those little numbers, just going across like so. If you want to use a dotting tool instead of a brush, that might be easier. Just make sure that you're using a dotting tool that is plenty small enough to get all of the 6 dots on the side that has 6. Add a little circle to whichever of the poker chips are facing up. You don't obviously have to do that to the ones that are in the stack because you can't see their middles anyway. And then once those are done, take white, and again, on the ones that are up, try to paint 2 sets of the 4 suits across the top in a circle around that blue or black ring. It's so small, and it, you know, you can barely even tell what they are. If you wanted to simplify it and just do dots, you certainly could. If you want to, you know, be dedicated and paint all the suits, I do think it looks really cute to have them all represented on there. It's up to you, however you want to do it. I've said this with so many different things. You can always simplify a design. I have clients that'll show me a picture and it's on really long nails and ask me, well, I can't do this. I really like it, but I can't do it. I'm like, well, sure you can. We just have to, you know, adjust it a little bit. It's the same thing with this design. If there's something about this that seems, you know, just too complicated, adjust it a little bit. If making the cards seems easy enough, but the dice, you know, if you're not good at sculpting things upright and the dice just seem like they're too much, skip the dice. Or the same thing, if the cards, just all that hand painting seems like it's too much, you could even flip them over and have it be a deck of cards with the faces down, and you could just do a little repeating pattern on the back of them. You know, you can always use something as inspiration and try to do something, you know, similar that you like without having to replicate it, I guess is sort of the idea behind a lot of the videos I have. Is you can always, you know, take inspiration from it and do something similar. Add a little dotting pattern around the outside of the chips, and then I'm going to apply a layer of matte top coat over the background of this nail, over the green, and then I'm going to apply some gel. It's not gel, it's 3D glaze over the top of my dice, my chips, and my cards. It looks satiny at the end. It's not as glossy as a gel product, and it is essentially just regular lacquer top coat, and it looks really beautiful on top of something that you want to look kind of, you know, plasticky, I guess, if you will. You know, not super shiny, but not really matte either, somewhere in between. I hope you guys love this design as much as I do. If you are a game player like I am, and if you understand cribbage, let me know if I'm completely on my own, if there's at least somebody out there, and I will see you guys next time. Bye!